Okay, we're going to get started. So again, my name is Brandon Van Cleve. I'm the Vice President here at Pinecone Consulting. And this month's webinar is regarding mobile security. And we were lucky enough to have Alan Phillips from Sophos join us, and he'll be running the show today. So I'm just going to go through a couple of our kind of introduction slides for any of you that don't know who Pinecone is and what we're doing here. We'll shed some light on that. So this is our 7th webinar of the year. So we've been doing these back since April on a monthly basis, different topics, mostly revolving around Sophos, as obviously that's our main focus as a company right now. But you can see all the different topics that we've addressed this year, and we record all of these sessions, and they're all on our YouTube page. So if there's any time you want to see one of these, or maybe you can't make one of our month's topics that you want to hit, they'll all be posted on our YouTube page, so go there. Who is Pinecone? So we're based in Bozeman, Montana. We've been doing IT consulting, provide solutions, kind of everything around IT for 24 years, about to be 25 here in a couple months. Really cybersecurity focused. We really honed in on cybersecurity. As we know, that's the biggest threat and the biggest interest level in IT right now is this big growing threat and what we're going to do to protect ourselves. So we really have ramped up our knowledge, our expertise, and have tried to share that out with all of our customers throughout the Northwest. We serve on some national security councils. I serve on the Meta Network Security Council here in Montana. And we actually won the National Cybersecurity Award with Sophos, so we were their North American Partner of the Year in 2016. So just last year, we were their North American Partner of the Year, which is a pretty cool honor for us, being we're not a huge company here in Montana, so being in the so-called flyover states, it's a pretty cool honor for us to be recognized the way we were. So as you can see, we've been a Sophos partner since 2002. We have pretty much every technical certification that they offer. Heavily invested in Sophos and what they're doing. We believe it's the right way to tackle this. We believe their vision is in line with our vision. So it's really been a great partnership for us. And then just why are we here? So I always try to put this into all of our presentations. So I've been speaking around the Montana-Wyoming area all year. I think we've done 13 or 14 different presentations, but really try to create a mission statement around that. And this is it. So we believe that your organization has either been attacked, is currently being attacked, or will be attacked by cyber criminals. So our mission is to provide you the knowledge, the vision, and the solutions to secure your assets as a business or as a school district or as a hospital. That's our goal here. So as we started to ramp up our cybersecurity practice, we noticed we were getting a lot of calls from people after the fact. Something catastrophic happened and we were called in to try to save the day. And so that's what kind of prompted us to start doing these discussions and talks and webinar series to see if we can educate people on the front end so we can maybe avoid that call after something catastrophic already happened. So that's kind of been our goal, and our mission of doing these things is to educate and give people the guidance to take action before it's too late. So that's Pinecone, that's us, and that's the last you're going to have to hear from me, I hope. So I'm going to kick it over to Alan and let him get started. I will say we have the question tab there inside the GoToWebinar panel. Please start populating questions in there. I will probably answer them all at the end, or I'll relay them to Alan to answer. But the last webinar we did, we had a ton of great questions. So please put them in there. I want this to be interactive. Make sure you're getting out of this what you want to. So put your questions in there, and I'll make sure we get to them. So with that, I'll kick it over to Alan.
My name's Alan Phillips. I'm the product manager over at Sophos for mobile. And we will go and have a quick look today at Sophos Mobile. I intend to break this down across a couple of things like technology in the market, how it's changed. We'll drill into some of the fun acronyms and some of the capabilities that you need to be aware of when securing mobile, as well as just managing mobile, right? The two typically go hand in hand, though you need to extend normal management to include security. So we'll cover off on those things, and if we've got time, we'll take questions at the end, and I'll point you in the direction of where you can go and have a look at least at the management console, and poke around just to see what features and things are available. So, without further ado, let's take a look at some of the mobile technology and the current market trends, kind of how it's gone. As with anything in technology, it's been a bit of acronym soup, right? We're running out of three-letter acronyms, but we're definitely doing our best. So back in 2010, 2011, MDM was the catchphrase of choice by all the analysts and everybody. It's probably the one I still get asked about most, but the reality is when you talk to analysts and the product teams themselves, they've sort of moved beyond MDM and gone into this concept of EMM, so Enterprise Mobility Management, which extended the basic concept of MDM and started looking at other things that need to happen on the device. And we'll talk about that shortly. And then the next phase that we're starting to see now is this concept of UEM. So you've gone beyond an iPhone and an Android. You're on tablets now. Maybe you're talking about Windows devices. Maybe you're talking about Macs. Maybe you're starting to think about IoT and wearables and where's that all going. So as you go through and if you hit MDM, EMM, UEM, the reality is we're kind of all in the same bucket, right? It all sort of points back to this whole idea of mobility management or mobility management and security. So from a mobility management standpoint today, you got the initial concept that MDM was there, right? That was that first bullet. Then we started tying in application management. And then from there, the idea of content management, making sure you deliver things out to the users. And then email management to make sure that you can control everything. Invariably, when I talk to people and they're talking about mobile and their strategies for mobile and what they're doing, is they're trying to make their employees more productive on their mobile devices. These mini computers we tout around in our pockets or in our backpacks. How do I make it so that you can access your data securely, right? So you can be productive, but without necessarily putting the corporate jewels on the line where anybody can get at them. So these things all come together to give us enterprise mobility management. And then the one extra piece that we'll add as well as we go through towards the end is we're going to add mobile security to this because it's a component. You'll often see it roll in under device management or application management as people try and fudge along. But as we talk about that in the current, in a few slides, you'll see that we want to expand that a little bit more. As we go through tomorrow and where we're going, oh my Lord, what's happening, right? We're seeing things come up now where different organizations are trying to embrace different strategies. When a new phone comes out and you're trying to pay $1,000, $1,200, $800, $500, it doesn't matter. You're looking at large numbers for a phone for your organization. Who's picking that up? Who owns the device? If you go for an iPad Pro and you drop in, again, a large sum of money, or if you go for a Galaxy tablet, or you go for a standard little Android tablet that you can just pick up at Best Buy for a couple $100, how are you putting that out there? Who's bringing that into the office? Who's accessing data? So smartphones, tablets, who owns them? Who's bringing them in? And typically you can break it down into the two that everybody recognizes, that's corporate-owned, business-operated, or like BYOD. And I always hate to use BYOD because it's one of those acronyms that's been sticking around since the turn of the century, I feel. But the reality is some organizations would love for their end users to bring in their own device and would love to be able to provide them access to corporate data without necessarily having to worry about the maintenance and the ownership of that device. We're seeing wearables pop out there now. Have they got business uses? You get alerts on them, but they're not quite to the point where they're as useful as we might see, right? As you see the new iWatch come out, and it does have the ability to connect to a cell network. That's going to be kind of interesting. But where are we at right now? It's one of those things that it's something we know we're going to have to deal with. You know that these devices will get more powerful and they'll have more capabilities. So we have to start thinking about that. IoT, if you haven't heard about IoT, I'm not sure which rock. It's one of those new acronyms that's been kicking around for a couple of years that everyone's kind of gone, I don't know. But as you start thinking about your environment and you start thinking about what you're trying to do, having small dedicated devices who've got one or two tasks to do in your environment is becoming more and more popular. We've seen everything from light bulbs to thermostats to cameras, but all these things are on the network and they're aware. So starting to think about that is it's an interesting piece. And then unified endpoints, where you start thinking about your Mac and your Windows as their architecture changes, as you look at like Windows 10 and how it's changed, and Mac. Are we starting to see them more along the same lines as the way that Android and Mac are built, right? So my iOS device has pre-built sandbox. Um, is the same true of my Mac all the way across? Windows, how are they locking it down? It's been very open from a development process for many, many years. Will that continue? Is the management paradigm going to stay the same? And as we take a look and we look at the way that Windows 10 has changed, for example, now you can manage devices in the same way that you would manage an old Windows phone, which again is now similar to how you manage an iOS device or an Android device. So all these things mean that you want to look forward, because this stuff's not going away. And as you roll out mobile devices, or as mobile devices get into your environment, we find ourselves looking at concerns, right? If we look at some of the studies done by the Her Majesty's government in the UK, they found that we're seeing twice as many data breaches, right? And that was back last year, or 2 years ago in 2015. More data breaches with smartphones. We're seeing organizations that are more and more sure that they've seen a security or a data breach happening with mobile devices, whether it be as a gateway to the rest of your environment, which is a conversation I had just 2 weeks ago with an organization not using Sophos, where they found themselves suddenly dealing with malware that made its way onto the network via an iPhone, because it was carried in and then they copied files off the iPhone onto the corporate network. So things like that you have to start worrying about. People with mobile devices, they go in, they may or may not be authorized by the organization. They Google, how do I get my corporate data on my phone? How do I access corporate email from my phone? And then they go figure it out. Because if the organization hasn't gone through and implemented the right checks and balances and put the right technical controls in place, suddenly they find more people using their personal devices or their smart devices than they ever thought. And it's kind of crazy. If you take a look at the bar chart in the bottom right, it was basically interviews done with about 1,000 IT companies, and they interviewed those IT companies' employees, and it was like, how many people do you think are using it? It was like, oh, about 26%, 25% of our people use mobile devices. And then the employees were interviewed, and it was like, nope, we're all using them. So you have to get your head around what's going on and get these things under some kind of management, or at least get the access to the corporate data restricted through some kind of management, so that you have control over what's going on. Otherwise, you're setting yourself up for an attack, and you're setting yourself up to be breached. And the reality is, end users like this. From a functionality standpoint, it's okay to be able to sit there on a Friday evening and read your email on the couch. It's okay to be sitting at your kid's soccer game when they're getting thrashed, looking at email, because at this point it's less painful. Or wherever you happen to be, right? It is helpful to be in touch. If something major comes in, it's a lot better knowing that someone can reach out, get a hold of you quickly, as opposed to just wondering what's happening in the office and trying to get back to a laptop. So we see that from a productivity standpoint. The reality is now that we all have this culture that we want access to everything. We want access to it when we need it, wherever we happen to be. And if the business doesn't provide us with a way to do it, then we're going to find a way. It's very Jurassic Park, hence the Iphonosaurus Rex there in the corner, because that guy will come running down your hallways as end users look for more and more ways to gain access to corporate data. And if you're not providing it and you're not sort of controlling it, then you're flying blind. And that's not a good place to be when you're dealing with a security posture. So from a Sophos product perspective, we've taken a look at all of those things. All right. When I sit back and I talk to customers, invariably the first thing I want to hear is I want to be able to control the device, make sure it's not in a bad state, so not jailbroken, rooted, that sort of thing. I want to make sure that the users are following good basic security principles. They've got pins or passwords on the devices, and I want to make sure that they're pre-configured so I don't have to worry about them, and I want to be able to remove that data if I think the user's misbehaving. So that's kind of the overall premise of things. And then I've got security policies and procedures that I have to worry about that have been established over the years, right? Who's got access to what? What does a good device look like? How can I see what my device is are like. Are they compromised? Are they in good health, right? What level of patch am I at? So things like that you have to start considering as you go through. And this is why we call it an EMM solution, Enterprise Mobility Management, because it takes the very basic device management that you have to deal with, and it wraps that up along the lines of mobile application management, content management, and email management. Today, as we talk about this, we've got iOS, Android, Windows 10, Windows 10 desktop support within this solution. So as we go through, there's going to be differences on the operating systems when it comes to things like containers. But for the most part, a lot of the functionality is relatively similar. When you talk about deployment, you're going to have a couple of options for you, and I've mistyped it in here. We've got the Sophos Central option, so you've got basically as a service options available to you, and you can also install on-premise. So first component, MDM. Basically, it's your inventory and asset management. This is the piece where you now know which devices that your organization owns and controls. This now allows you to go in, lock the device, wipe the device, do compliance checks, see what's going on, see how it's installed. Right? You can do this on your iOS devices, your Androids, your Windows 10, and your Windows 10 desktops. With Apple, there's a really cool piece of component now called DEP, so the Device Enrollment Program. And what that allows you to do is if you go out and buy, say, an iPad or an iPhone, is it can automatically be registered to your MDM solution. So in this case, someone takes the device out of the box, they've unwrapped it, Apple's already put the serial number into your DEP account, they power it up, it joins Wi-Fi, Apple says you belong to this organization's MDM, and immediately that device checks in and receives the policies and profiles necessary. So mobile device management, think of that really as how you can control and configure those devices and how you see what's going on with your assets in the field. All right? There's a self-service portal available too for this whole suite, the whole EMM suite, which will allow users to come in and register the devices. So if you tell them to go out and pick up a device, or you've just shipped them a device and they need them to register it, they can go in and register their device through the self-service portal. And they can do some basic things like they can do the loss and theft protection. They can, if they've misplaced their phone, they can do the locate if they need to. They can lock it, they can wipe it, and they can unenroll and re-enroll depending on what rights you give them to do in that self-service portal. But it alleviates the work that you have to do and try to bring these devices under management. As we go from here, the next piece is I've got the device under management. I know it's protected. I know I can find it and wipe it if necessary. But I also need now to make sure that I provide the tools necessary to do the job. So I can turn around and put out applications. I can push out a list of applications that I would like you, the end user, to use. I would like you, the end user, to go see these apps, download them, and I'll configure them for you so that you can do your job. All right? We can also, if you happen to build your own applications, you can upload those into the Sophos server itself, and it will act like an enterprise application store. If you're dealing with Apple, Apple again has a volume purchase program. So instead of trying to deal with a multitude of expense reports, users go out when you tell them to, they download the app you've requested, and the licensing is taken care of based upon your organization's VPP account. Once you start talking about that, you can move on for things like Droid, where now you've got a little bit more control over blocking apps from running. But on all these platforms, we can see what applications are installed when you manage the device. And from a corporate perspective, now you can say, here's apps that I don't want to have installed, or here's apps that I must have installed. And you can use those as a compliance check to give yourself alerts or take actions if a device falls out of compliance to make sure you're in a good place to protect your corporate data while making these guys sort of have what they need. So mobile application manager, that's really this idea now that you're providing the right apps to the device and you're trying to make sure the wrong ones aren't there. Content management takes us to that next step, and it's interesting to watch this evolve, right? 4 years ago, Dropbox was sort of the way of moving data around without sending it through email. I know many email admins used to hate it when we all sent those 67 meg PowerPoint presentations through email to everybody in the organization. They got twitchy for some reason. But now cloud storage really provides a good alternative to this. I can put the file in one location in the sky and access it from any of my devices as long as I have the correct credentials to log into Dropbox. But as we saw, these cloud type storage devices are susceptible and people can give up their credentials because they're human. One of the tricks now is to make sure that the data is secure. Make sure there are no man in the middles. Make sure no one manages to hack into your account. Encrypt that data before it leaves corporate control. So on the mobile device, if you want to go save a file to, say, Dropbox, we'll encrypt it. If you want to save a file from, say, a Windows or a Mac, you can take advantage of the Sophos safeguards. This idea now that we've got multiple products working together. So the Sophos safeguard file encryption will encrypt those files before they go to the sky, and then the key rings are shared across the mobile devices and the Windows and Mac devices themselves. So end user experiences, I can access anything that's corporate built and delivered without having to worry about who else could maybe gain access to the file. They may be able to grab the file somehow for whatever reason, right? Somebody else got attacked, but it's protected because it's encrypted. I need to log into a managed device or into a managed container where I have keys presented to me. So this gives me the ability now to securely provide end users with a way to edit, collaborate on documents, and sort of control access to corporate information by preventing them from copying and pasting data out onto an unsecure phone, for example, or into another application that maybe isn't corporate approved. So content management really now gives you this ability to give your end users a way to access and collaborate with corporate data regardless of what device they're running. The email management sort of just zooms in a little bit on the number one use case, right? We all use email on our mobile phones, but is the device itself secure? So you sit down and we talk about iOS and it's sandboxed, and great. Apple does a great job of making sure the device is secure, but what happens when it messes up, right? With Android, you may use Samsung Knox, you may use Sony LG's, Sony or LG phones, right? But what happens if you're not? What happens if you're using a Motorola or some other mobile device that doesn't have an email client that you can configure? And even if it does, all those things are configured and maintained at the operating system level. A good way you can push out and configure those native clients where available, but you want to start thinking about containers here too. Do I take a second email client that is just corporate, that I have full control over? It doesn't matter what device I install it on, it's going to be configured the same way, but I can also make it go away. And this sort of brings us over to the idea of containers. If you think about content management and you think about email management, automatically you get led to this idea that I really want to keep all the data in one bucket that is business. Anything that goes into that business bucket, I want full control over, and I want to be able to make sure that nobody can mess with that. All right? If the device or the environment suddenly becomes unfriendly, I will then want to be able to lock that down. And this is where Sophos Mobile really comes into its own again, right? We have the ability to maintain the device, see what's going on, but then you get the Sophos containers where I've got that content management, I have the ability to protect my email calendar and contacts all within these container apps. So you can work on your device, but as soon as something goes wrong with your device or there's some kind of issue with the device, it can get locked down. Now, of course, the issue could just be you, and we could just lock it down because of something you've done, but say there's a piece of malware on there. Say you've been tricked into jailbreaking or rooting your device, right? Humans are still human. We will detect that and lock you out of that container. What becomes the next step of that is if you start thinking about BYO, right? If you start thinking about the BYOD world itself, that becomes a little bit more interesting. Right? We've got our container overview, fits nicely into the mobile content management and email management, hitting those pieces there, and serves it up in very simple, easy-to-use applications. So that will be the Sophos Secure Workspace and Sophos Secure Email apps that fall into this bucket. Those applications themselves, up until this summer, required that you manage the device. We simply released, we just released Sophos Mobile 7.1 in the past month. And the big ticket item on there is this idea of container-only management. So consider now that I don't necessarily want to manage the device, I just want to manage the container. That will allow me to push out configuration for how to get a corporate email, how to access your corporate web pages through our corporate browser, access the files just like we talked about, whether it be through Dropbox, OneDrive, however you choose to share them, and keep your corporate email, calendar, and contacts all within this lockup, but without requiring the device management. So solving some of those privacy concerns. Many BYOD projects have failed because users wanted to know, why are you trying to locate my device? Why do you need to be a device admin? By removing that, it shifts a block for BYO. So something definitely to be aware of, and we've seen some good traction on that. Due to the way we license everything, this is the same license advanced, mobile advanced license as when you do MDM. So if you go out and you deploy in your environment and you've got some corporate owned and you want some BYOD, it's all done from the same console, and they're pretty much all the same policies. It just depends on how you register the device. From a usability and experience, we've made some changes. We've updated the interface in Central. We've added in some more filters, some more concepts around how you can find data and what the workflows are. It's always a tough one to make sure you get workflows right, and we're constantly reviewing those. And we have like third-party testers that come in and will look at these workflows and give us feedback so we can continue to tweak those. We've also updated in the last one our management improvements. So obviously we had to do iOS 11 and Android O, so that got taken care of. Windows 10 improvements came along, so we added in some IMAP and some POP support for their email and simplified the enrollment process. Up until recently, the Windows 10 enrollment process was a little painful just because of the mechanisms built into Windows. But based on feedback from organizations such as Sophos and the large customers, right, that's been improved and streamlined. So that's it in a nutshell around the EMM, right? That's the whole EMM components. And if you think about that, the device management giving you right PIN, make sure that you turn on encryption, get an understanding from the device itself what sort of state it's in. Those will give you a pretty good place to look at in terms of what the environment look like. Where we go a step above and have sort of an edge where other people certainly don't have, we've talked about the containers, which we've done very well with the unmanaged containers, is we now start leveraging the traditional Sophos technology. It probably wasn't lost on many of you that may not quite be seen as traditional Sophos tech. We've been doing it for a good 7 years now, but still it was like we're doing more management, and all of that is available in Central. Also available in Central, and also part of the Sophos Advanced, Mobile Advanced piece, is mobile security for Android. And we're going to talk about two of these. So mobile security for Android is an application you will install on your Droid devices, and it will go ahead and it will allow you to do web filtering. It will allow you to scan the websites that you're going to visit using Sophos Labs, using SXL lookups, to see what is this website I'm going to. Is it compromised? Is it bad? Does it have a classification? So if I need to do filtering, I can. Right? And you can manage all of that. It'll also go and look for malicious content. So if you've downloaded an APK, we'll go scan it. We'll find out what it's trying to do, what it's looking at doing. Do we know this to be good or bad? Is it malicious? Is it potentially unwanted? Is it just sort of chock full of advertising? Keep in mind, whenever you download a free app, they're usually loaded with advertising. Or is it just low reputation? Right? You've also got this idea of a low rep app, where now it turns around and says, we haven't really seen enough of this application in the wild. You might just want to keep an eye on it. And things like that, we're going to continue to expand to pay more attention and monitor it more so we can see what it's doing on your behalf. There's also things like the Privacy Advisor. So you get an insight into all the other applications you've installed on your device and what that means for your privacy. You know, we've got things like the QR code scanner, because no one can read a QR code scanner by the naked eye, at least no one I've met. So understanding what happens when you scan that QR code, we'll go look at it for you and give you a heads up. Is it good? Is it bad? Or why are we worried about it? And you can manage this either through SMC, whether that be on-prem, as part of the advanced, or if you want and you just need something like the mobile security for Android, it is available in the standalone, also managed just from Central. And it would be remiss of me not to point out that the detection rates on this application have been perfect for the last 3 years. So AV tests do a scan, and the actual scan percentages, we've found everything for the last 3 years they've thrown at us. So that's always a good thing. The next question that always comes up here is, what about iOS? iOS becomes a little tricky. You can turn around and say iOS is the most secure platform out there, and that would be a fair comment from a certain point of view. The biggest thing is AV on iOS is inefficient. Even if you get malware onto an iOS device, you need to have the device in a certain state for it to be useful. So if the device isn't rooted, then applications can't really access other applications' data. It's the way it's set up. You have to hand data from one app to another. So if someone puts on an application that's not trustworthy and you hand data to it, that's a little different. So you have to have a good idea of what applications are installed. But your best defense will always be keep your iOS up to date. The guys at Apple do a pretty good job, as if there's an exploit that's been put out there, of releasing a fix very quickly. All right, they'll update it, push it out, make sure your users are on the latest version of iOS. That's usually the best approach to this. So we've released the app in an unmanaged mode for now, so that people can take a look, see what versions they're missing out on. It gives them a secure QR code reader and the authenticator from that you have on Android. And we're continuing to expand what we do with mobile security on iOS, because both iOS and Android, there are different vectors now that we should probably be taking a look at as the threat landscape evolves. So stay tuned on some more stuff around mobile security for iOS. But the bottom line really with Android is you're in much better shape if you've got the device under management and you have mobile security. With iOS, device under management is huge, and can you make sure the thing is up to date. If you need to go to BYO mode, you're going to give up some of that. That's why you have a container that can at least see is the device jailbroken or rooted and will protect itself regardless of the environment. So those things you need to sort of consider as you roll along and start talking about bringing mobile into your environment. So for us, what we've seen and what we've heard from analysts and other customers is really, from an EMM perspective, Sophos Mobile really presents the best solution for your mid-market. You don't want to spend a ton of time and effort on this because you probably don't have it. Right? You need to get these devices under management, under your control, and make sure that they're giving your end users the ability to be productive on these devices, but in a secure manner. So as we flip from here, just think about this, right? And when you think about mobile and you think about Sophos in the overall big scheme of things, if you need enterprise mobility management, well, yes, that's provided. And there's a lot of that out there. You need anti-malware? Well, now, if you're dealing with Sophos, great, and we've got that covered for you as well. You start talking about web security, Sophos will provide you that as well. The encryption, there's some built directly into the container. You might want to integrate that with the Safeguard products to give you end-to-end encryption across all your platforms, Windows, Mac, iOS, and Android. And as you start talking about network security, consider this now. So my mobile device needs to VPN into the organization, or my mobile device wants to connect to Wi-Fi. If those things are managed by Sophos products, they can communicate with the Sophos mobile server and ask, what is the compliance state of that mobile device before I allow it onto my network? And that's where you start thinking about the concept of that better together security you're getting from Sophos. So beyond mobile now, tying it back into the rest of your environment, not just the whole device. So a couple of things to wrap up for you. You really want to enable those mobile devices and limit risks. You want to keep it relatively simple to install, manage, and maintain. Those things taken care of. Containers, they are your friend. If you're managing devices and you're dealing with multiple versions of Android, they just make it so much simpler to manage the delivery of email, right? You don't have to worry about either touching those ones that don't have APIs. It's a consistent management message across the board. With the latest update, you all can also now deliver content to unmanaged devices. Pricing, I'll leave out for other people, but it is flexible and it's very competitive in the market. And if you're already a Sophos customer and you're already talking about Central, this already integrates. It's already there and available for you. It makes your life just simpler. So things there for you to take away and think of. I know we got stuck a little late, but what I'm going to do now is you can go to sophos.com, the mobile demo, But what I'm going to do is I am going to launch us a web browser and just show you how to take a look and poke around in the console yourselves. And you can always get a full-on demo. So you go to sophos.com, go to products, click on Sophos Mobile, and then you've got an online demo. You're going to log in with your Sophos ID if you don't have one. It's very simple to set up and create. Don't worry about Jay. I'm sure she's a lovely lady. We don't need to talk to her right now. Because every time I ask them questions, they just ask me anyway. I'm just kidding. the really difficult ones. So here you go, the Sophos mobile console. And now this is where you can start popping in. You've got your different devices, your compliance states. What's really gone wrong with the device over here? What's going on with Bill? All right, I've got 1, 2, 3 clicks. I know exactly what's going on. Bill has malware installed, right? And the way we've broken that down means that, all right, this is compliance violations, but I can go in and take care of the most important ones first in the morning, right? I know what's going on. I can see the state of my environment, how many different versions of Android, how many different versions of iOS are installed on this server. You can come through, you can poke around at the policies that are available. Right? You can come in and look at a mobile security policy. You can see the options for how you manage the scanning on antivirus. Right? You can pop in here. You can look at container policies. You can jump in and say, okay, here's how my container is going to be protected. Right? We decided a 4-digit PIN, but we've also decided you got to be within 5 clicks of this location. I could turn around and put in time fencing that restricts employees from accessing email outside of business hours. There have been instances where organizations have been approached by unions and workers to request overtime because they sent an email on the Sunday. These are the sort of things that you will have control of on those mobile devices, and it's just worthwhile taking care of. All right, your email config, doesn't matter what version of Android it is, that's the email config in the container. If we flip to iOS and we go look at that container policy and we look at the corporate email config, pretty much the same thing. So have a look there, get a full demo, request a demo, play with it, have a trial. What I should probably do right now is just bring us back and open it up for questions. I tried to catch up on time. I know we're running a little late, but if there are any questions and we do have time to answer them, we should take them now.
Thanks, Alan. So yeah, you can go ahead and put your questions in to the questions box there. In the meantime, I had a question for you. So, you know, we've been preaching the synchronized security message over the course of the last year specifically. Can you talk about mobile and how it plays into that, or what the roadmap is? How does all this stuff communicate together and work stronger together than individually?
Yeah, so for the synchronized security, you've got multiple options. When you tie this into Central, the first thing you're going to see is you're going to see things talking to each other directly, right? And you got everything from the Central console. What you're going to see from a roadmap perspective is, now that we've moved a lot of this into Central, is we'll move some of the on-prem integrations up into the cloud. So as file encryption today is only on-prem, once it gets into the Central platform, you'll see mobile directly being able to pull those keys down, right? So antivirus kicks in. If you think about it today, we already do what synchronized security does, but on a very small scale. If the device goes out of compliance, we shut off your access to email. We delete, or we remove your ability to access sensitive data until that has been restored. We have the ability to talk to the old UTM devices and have them manage your Wi-Fi connections. We can also tie that in with other people's stuff, but let's not talk about them right now. All of that is being moved up into Central over the coming period of time, which I can't commit to because it's not all us. But the goal here is, if a mobile device is compromised, you shouldn't be able to get Wi-Fi. If you configure Wi-Fi with a certain setting, that should automatically be pushed out to corporate managed devices. Those are the sorts of things you're going to see appear in that central interface around the synchronized security.
Awesome. Thanks. Well, yeah, if there's no other questions, again, like I said, well, just as I say that, here comes one here. So once Sophos identifies installed malware to a mobile device, Sophos mobile ability to clean malware installed. Wait, Sophos mobile ability to. You got it? Okay.
Yeah. So what are the capabilities to remove malware once installed? And you can't. So let's start with the ugly point. If you deal with Android and someone installs a piece of malicious code, you can't stop it from being there. What will happen is the end user will be alerted and told, hey, this is bad. The administrator will be alerted and told, hey, this is bad. If the end user tries to run the application, for example, we'll block it. We won't let it run. But it has to be a manual operation to remove it. And that's just one of the hang-ups from having what is essentially a personal device, or what was designed to be a personal device, moved into the corporate world. So we'll block it. We won't let it run. We will make sure all the important people know. We will change the state of the device and prevent access to corporate data so that nothing gets reached by this malicious content. But you cannot remove an app, for example, or even go and delete a file on the Android without the end user being involved. It's just one of those things you're not allowed to do.
Great.
Control it, contain it, and get someone to come and beat it over the head. That's the way to do it.
Okay, is there any other questions out there? Okay, great. Well, like I said, this will be recorded, and if you need any more information on this, you can email me directly. You can email sales@pinecc.com, and a number of people have eyes on that to get back to you and answer any questions that you have. So thanks again for attending. Alan, thanks a bunch for joining us and enlightening us on all this stuff. I really appreciate your time and energy on this, and we'll be in touch with everybody. Yeah, thanks, Alan.
Thank you.